At the National Maritime Museum at the moment, we are embarking on a museum-wide organisational change project called Endeavour. This project is really thinking about how we break down the barriers to access for our currently underrepresented audiences. It's starting to look at how we can involve communities in research and interpretation. So it's thinking across the museum all of our different practices, from contemporary collecting to more collaborative programming, to creating much more accessible volunteering roles and alternative ways into working at the museum. We're hoping that the work that we do during this project will have a much longer term impact on the way that we work and how our audiences relate to us as a museum.
SHAPE have asked me to be involved in this project as a facilitator to work with the Youth Forum in our exploration of delving into the museum's collection, looking at histories of disability and making a creative response together.
For our first community-led research project, we wanted to focus on uncovering histories of disabilities. With SHAPE Art's wealth of experience and knowledge, we wanted to co-create a project in which young disabled leaders would help us to dig deeper into our collections.
Here we are at the National Maritime Museum, one of the most beautiful places in London.
We, as a group of creative individuals from SHAPE's Youth Forum, have created a collaborative response to the work on show at the museum.
We're here to bring disabilities to the front of the museum and show them in a positive light.
We looked at work at the museum and used it for inspiration for work inspired by disability.
After 4 days' work, this is what each person in the team come up with.
SHAPE Art really wanted to take part in the project at the National Maritime Museum, to start a conversation about changes in the museum for the benefit of the institution and the disabled people. When you work around disability, sometimes this brings a lot of questions. So I think we started a very good conversation that we can carry on.
I was inspired by the Billy Walters painting, but in a way I was inspired in the wrong way, because I really didn't like it at first. It portrayed people with disabilities as beggars. However, after looking again, I realised it was a good thing because it shows that he's still trying to make a living through his passion, which was music. My other piece of work I was looking at was Nelson's letter. He portrayed himself as a burden to his country and friends, and I didn't like that, but I do like the way he's overcome his anxiety and physical disability and maintained a high level of power.
If someone did something wrong or they stood out of line, then they would be punished by being whipped with a canine tail. The weapon seems like it is an aggressive and a painful weapon to use. The sailors who were being whipped couldn't defend themselves.
I took inspiration from the gallery of Nelson's combined knife and fork, in which I created my own creative response to that, which was 3 redesigned medical aids that I produced for my degree show.
My objects are a little small portrait of Napoleon Bonaparte and the last jacket that Lord Nelson was wearing in 1805 at the Battle of Trafalgar. The jacket I chose because of the life that he had. He had 2 disabilities. First, he lost his sight in his right eye, and then he lost his right arm. He didn't let those disabilities get in the way, and he stood up and he's remembered throughout history as one of the bravest men of his time. The other is a very, very small portrait of Napoleon Bonaparte, Napoleon I of France. It's now thought that he was actually epileptic. These 2 men didn't let their physical or mental disabilities get in their way.
The reason why I chose James Hammond because he's inspiring to me. He was known as the blind traveller. He was partially blind when he was 25 and he joined the Royal Navy. He took expeditions all around the world and found great continents, even though he was blind.
One fine day I set my sights on what to do with my life.
My song I wrote for this project, a few works at the Maritime Museum inspired it. One was of two beggars, one of which being a disabled sailor. Another was a picture of a disabled person working as a cook on a ship, as it was considered a low-skilled job, and if you became disabled you were often given the job of being a cook.
I begged the captain for some change, a change in how I was betrayed.
I think this project has been very inspirational and I've learnt a lot, and I think more places should do projects like this.
I've enjoyed the project so much. To be able to learn how people throughout time in the Navy have had a disability and overcome it really does mean a lot.
I believe the project was fantastic. We saw the young people taking part, being active, asking questions about the collections, being surprised by so many other stories they learned.
Working with Shape Arts and their young people has opened up a whole range of possibilities about how we represent histories of disability within our collections. But in fact, we've only just started scratching the surface with this project. We want to continue these conversations in the future and really start to embed representation of a whole range of different types of audiences, histories and narratives within our museum.